Hello, this is Justin here with a very special interview episode with Dave Baker. He is a comic book artist, writer, Renaissance man who has made tons of books, whether it be Halloween Boy, Mary Tyler Moorehawk, or the probably released by the time of this podcast, Pumpkinheads. And I just want to welcome him and just talk about, this is a movie podcast. We're going to talk about movies. Dave, your comics, they're pulpy. They're filled with monsters. They're also about ennui and like trying to struggle with a creative spirit. Out of everyone that I've probably ever met, you have the career I wish I had if I could do comics. Every time I read one of your comics, I'm like, oh, this is something that I would have made.
That's very flattering. Thank you.
And I'll just start with a really hard question right from the get-go, because the goal of this interview is that the people listening, when it ends, they go, well, I guess I have to buy one of Dave Baker's books. There's no two ways about it. So it may get you in a lot of trouble, but what is your favorite Godzilla movie?
Dude, man, talking about starting off strong with the impossible.
You're going to get people on your side, people against you.
It's going to be against me because, look, I am fully aware this is not the best Godzilla movie. In fact, I don't even think it's a particularly good Godzilla movie.
I asked what your favorite was, so you got a lot of leeway there.
Space Godzilla. Godzilla versus Space Godzilla.
Oh, that is a controversial choice.
It's one that people either really connect with or really don't, but the fact that the design of Space Godzilla is so cool, the fight at the end is really cool. The fact that the middle of the movie is just like people on a beach for like 40 minutes is so fucking funny to me.
Space Godzilla was a movie that was made by someone who had been in like the Godzilla trenches forever. And he was actually pretty old when he directed that movie. And I think the whole vibe of the film feels that way.
100%.
Is that something that you kind of react to? Like,
it feels beleaguered and sad and like desperately attempting to reconnect with a previous version of yourself, which I really like. And also, I just love the design of Space Godzilla. Like when I was a kid, like that's what lured me in. And then what you're describing is what I look at as an adult, and like it's just so fucking funny that they're like, I don't know, they're on a beach for 40 minutes.
And wait, now that I think about it, you wrote a Godzilla versus Space Godzilla comic, didn't you?
I wrote an issue of Godzilla Rivals, which is King Ghidorah versus Space Godzilla versus Godzilla. And I wrote it because I was like, this might be the only time I get to write a Godzilla thing. You bet your ass Space Godzilla is going to be in that shit.
Now, how is the larger Godzilla entity at this point in time? Because it feels they're like, yeah, just do whatever you want after decades of being shut down and very controlling.
I would say the coolest part, because I've worked in like animation and I've worked in live action film, I've worked on TV shows and in comics. And the thing that's always really interesting to me about all of those disparate areas is the kind of like the rubric that you're handed to do the work. You know, sometimes there are very strict rules, sometimes they're very lax. The thing that was so interesting about the Godzilla project was they were very lax in terms of what I wanted to do, but how I did it, they were very specific about. They gave me like a beat sheet of like 10 specific things I could not do. You can't have Godzilla make any human gestures. Like he can't do the thumbs up, or like he can cock his head like a dog, but he can't like, whoa, like a human.
Because I remember Tom Scioli talking about that his pitch was that like a human turns into Godzilla, and they were like, no, absolutely not. That's not happening.
You can't refer to it as him, even though they call him him in the movies all the time.
Oh, that's interesting. I like that.
Yeah, it's an it. None of the kaiju can have gendered pronouns. They're all it. What would you call the thing that shoots out of Godzilla's mouth when he gets angry?
Atomic breath.
Yes, it's not called that.
What is it called?
It's called heat breath. I wrote atomic breath in the panel descriptions, and they were like, no, it's heat breath. And I don't know why that is, but that is an internal editorial thing.
Do they not want Godzilla associated with like radioactivity at all?
Yeah, okay. Basically.
Wow.
And in the Godzilla versus Los Angeles short story I did.
Oh, I love that one about how you use the subway system in LA to escape Godzilla.
Because I take the subway all the time. The subway system here kind of sucks.
The only time I rode the subway in LA when me and my wife visited, there were kids that were smoking giant cigars. And then another guy picked a fight with those kids.
Hell yeah.
In the middle of the subway. And I was like, I want to ride the subway, and now I can't.
Yeah, it's a miserable experience, and yet I love it. So I take it everywhere. The comic I made is basically like a history of the subway, why it's bad, how it got that way, the like institutional problems that Los Angeles had and continues to have around public transportation, which is something I'm passionate about because I hate driving. If I could write on the train going somewhere, that's more productive and that I'm happier as a person. But like in that one, there was a panel where like I just used a photo of Godzilla. He was saying something like, that sucks. But like it's not really Godzilla. It's just like a stylistic kind of thing. And they were like, no.
Wow.
No, you can't.
Now, you can make Godzilla hammers, Godzilla underwear, everything else. But it's very funny that they're very strict about what you can't do in like a storytelling form.
It's very interesting, though, to kind of see those inner workings, you know?
Dave is on the podcast because you have a new book coming out, Pumpkinheads. How would you sell it in a couple sentences to the people listening? People that may not even read comics. They're like, I watch movies, no comics.
Oh my God. They don't read comics. One, I would say I am a longtime fan of the Important Cinema Club podcast.
Oh, thank you very much.
The high concept for Pumpkinheads is it's a coming-of-age romance comic about kids that live in a shitty punk flophouse together and play in a band that's like a horror punk band where they wear giant pumpkin masks and try to live in Los Angeles and not die. The work I make, I would say probably half of it is kind of like genre stuff that's like I'm very interested in, like weirdo, bin divey, like physical media culture-y type stuff. And then the other half is kind of like coming of age romance comics because that's something else I'm very passionate about. And I make a lot of those with an artist named Nicole Goux. We've made like 6 graphic novels together. Pumpkinheads is kind of about a girl who is attending art school, gets broken up with by her girlfriend, and then kind of crashes out and goes, well, fuck it, I'll just move into this shitty punk flophouse with a guy I had a thing for in high school. Oh, what's that? We're sleeping together, and also he wants me to front his shitty band? Okay, I guess I'll do all of these things. What could go wrong about intertangling your creative outlet, living situation, and romantic prospects all in one situation when I'm definitely like emotionally stable? This will go amazing.
To sell it to listeners of this podcast, there is a 2-page spread explaining the art of matte painting at one point in the book.
It is about like being in a punk band, but it's also just about like the struggle of being an artist and kind of like having to continually remake yourself and sort of become lost in the idea of who you were versus who you are and who you want to become and how various artists handle that prospect. So one of the characters, she has an uncle who's like a retired, failed, bottomed out of the industry matte painter. And there's a kind of mentor relationship that she has with him where she's like, I don't know that I want to be making music. I don't know what I'm doing. And he's telling her kind of about like the rise and fall of working in the matte painting industry in the 70s in LA.
Something that I love about your work is that you just talked about that split between like the genre stuff and the more slice of life stuff, but there is still a density that I love when I read your work where there's so much going on in Pumpkinheads, even though that at its core it's a simple story, but it's very complex emotionally in the way that it plays out, especially with the tapestry of all the characters. Is it tough? Like, because you write these books, do you do layouts for them as well for Nicole?
It depends. Usually not. She gives a lot of feedback during the writing process. So I'm really writing these books for her. Like I'm not writing a book and then she draws it. It's almost a command performance where I'm like performing for Vladimir Putin, like that fucking Dolph Lundgren movie, command performance. Like, what is it that Nicole is going to need to make a great book?
Wait, sorry, I have to stop you there. The classic expression command performance, which we all associate with the Dolph Lundgren directed film, command performance.
Dude, he's Joe the drummer, my guy. He's Joe.
We love it. It's like Die Hard, but at a concert.
That's like one of my favorite periods of Dolph.
The DTV era?
Oh, yeah. And I love that era of him just being like, no one else is going to make my movie. I guess I'll make my movie. I don't know why I'm doing like an Arnold Schwarzenegger voice.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wasn't going to critique you as a man who is not good at impressions.
But he has that weird, like, is it Swiss? Is it a Swiss accent? Like,
yeah, it's a weird accent that like clearly got formulated as he came up in Hollywood and he locked in and he hasn't moved away from there. And I think the reason he became a director is that Sidney J. Furie was directing a movie that he was in, and Sidney J. Furie like dropped out at the last minute, and then Dolph kind of stepped in and became a director out of necessity. And then he's like, oh, I guess I kind of like this. What else we got? Missionary Man, command performance. I kind of like Dolph directed. That one with Scott Adkins that we talked about on the podcast. I don't remember what it was called. He's good. Nice, straightforward, efficient. But I would not call your book straightforward. None of the ones that I've read, Halloween Boy, Mary Tyler Moorehawk.
Yeah, I don't think they're straightforward necessarily, but they are specifically the books that I make with Nicole. She has specific things she's interested in, and I have things that I'm interested in. And sometimes those are the exact same thing, and sometimes they're wildly divergent. And so it's about kind of like matching up the constellation of our interests and seeing how they overlap and what we can manifest together, you know?
Do you ever pitch to her something like really geeky in the books and she's like, I don't know what this is?
At this point, she's spent enough time with me that she's kind of brainwashed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she just knows the dumb things that I'm into. Like, in the book, there are no references to Pumpkinhead, the movie. She was the one of the characters is wearing a Pumpkinhead shirt. And I was like, oh, of course. Why didn't we put that in there? And she was like, well, yeah, I don't know. I just put it in there. And I was like, yeah, obviously. But that's something I should have written a scene with that. But Nicole was the one who came up with the idea of a pumpkin. She's the one who came up with the name. And it was so funny that I was like, oh, yeah, 100% we have to make that book.
Okay, so because I'm reading this book and I know only a little bit about you, and I was like, am I seeing deep into Dave's life and experiences that he's had himself?
Is it literally autobiographical? No. But like it is, I mean, to a certain degree, because everything I do is that way. But also, I would say that like the stuff in the book is like either mined from things that I've been through or my friends have been through. But it's like ratcheted up to 11.
But because I was reading, I was like, has Dave had to have this, conversation about what does it mean to be in a relationship versus being creative collaborators?
I feel like anybody who's had a long-term partner that's in a creative sense, you have to fall in love with that person. Like regardless of what your actual orientation is. Like I've had many relationships with collaborators, both men and women, where like I feel like I know them better than their actual partners because I see them under pressure and I see them in all of these different perspectives that a normal relationship just never gets stress tested under. And also I have to try and reverse engineer their brain to build a blueprint for a thing for them to spend 40 hours meticulously rendering. So there's like a weird spiritual connection there and also a literal connection and also an emotional one. So to put a point blank answer on it, yes, you totally, and also no, but yes.
How do you approach a comic cinematically? Is that something that you think about a lot when you write it?
I would not use the word cinematically. I would use the word formalist in that I'm very interested in the mechanisms of comics that are endemic to the medium and are specific to the medium that can't be replicated somewhere else. And the thing I always try to explain to people that are new to writing comics, they think you're writing a story like one page at a time in order, flowing like a screenplay, where if you're doing that, in my opinion, you need to look at what a comic is, because the way comics are read is you're reading a page and a double page spread at the same time. So you have to think about the composition of the panel, the composition of the page, and the composition of the double page spread all at once. And how do those interact with each other, play off each other? Are they interacting with each other? Yeah, so that's more of the process for me, is like figuring out like what are the formal tenets of this comic? Are we doing 6-panel grids? Are we doing 9-panel grids? Are we doing only caption mechanics? Are we doing page turns where only the big reveals are going to be on even pages or odd pages? Are we going to do like, oh, there are no double page spreads in this book, it's only half splashes or something at the bottoms of pages? Like, what is the rubric and the style for each piece?
I feel in like the early 2000s, there was that drive of like, oh, comics can be cinematic. And what that meant was like, Paul Gulacy doing all those like widescreen panels when he was doing like the Shang-Chi Max title, or like decompressed storyline. Seems to be like a disconnect that cinematic does not mean those things. Comics themselves are their own storytelling method, and they can reflect cinema in a way, but in their own mechanism, versus you are imitating shots like, oh, it looks like a Brian De Palma split diopter.
You know, like I said, like I've worked in animation and live action film, and I've written for both of those, and I have a pile of unmade screenplays, you know? I wrote a movie that was produced and ended up on Netflix called Alien Warfare. You know, I mean, you guys always talk about like Edward G. Ulmer and like the weird Poverty Row stuff, and like that's my version of, I've now made the 2020s version of a Poverty Row movie. Like, is it good? No. Frankly, is it even what I wrote?
Yeah, there's 2 other writers credited on that script, and I have a feeling that like Dave, that got away from him after a certain point.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I'm honest about what it is. Like, it was a fun experience. I enjoyed it. I liked working on it while I was working on it. And then when I was done working on it, I was like, okay, cool. That was a great experience. On to the next thing. I think we are both people who are very interested in the kind of like, what does Will always call it on your show? Termite art?
Yeah, that's a Manny Farber expression, the critic.
I'm very interested in that as well. Like one of my favorite people ever is Henry Darger, the outsider artist from Chicago who wrote the world's longest novel and created like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of illustrations for it, and it never got published. I think there's a version of every artist relates to that and fears that that's them. Like, that like, oh, I'm going to be the weirdo that my family is like, remember so-and-so? Old Uncle Dave, man, he was a fucking crazy person.
Now, you work in comics now. I know you have a day job as well. And I'm like, what? I have all these Dave Baker books and it's not paying the bill? He doesn't live in a giant mansion? What's going on?
I wish, yeah.
Now, did you move to LA with the goal to work in film?
My journey in terms of that was when I was in high school and in college, I was really deep in comics, self-publishing comics, trying to get published in mainstream comics. I was really bitter and cynical and frustrated by the fact that so many people in my age range or in like one rung above me took work in that world. Even though I loved it, I had a very kind of like scene mentality, like a fucking shitty punk thing of like, I'm never gonna sell out, man, that's fucking shitty. And honestly, it was a helpful experience for me to unlearn some of those things. I realized that making things is difficult, and also you only have so much time, and what is it that you care about, and there's only so many ways to make money as an artist. So is this something you're passionate about? Do you want to do it? And what are you willing to sacrifice for it? And all of that kind of caused me to sort of unpack like, oh, it's just not a reality to make a living making comics. Like, okay, so if that's the case, and I looked down on these people for, quote, selling out, why do I think what they did is selling out? And for me, at that point, my immature perspective on it is like, oh, they don't make comics anymore. They only do this type of work. My situation was I was working at a website writing about paint, and like literally like the type of work where you're like, oh, a monkey could do this. But I was over the moon. I was like, they're paying me to write words. Awesome. And a woman overdosed on my front steps. It was a really big wake-up call. I was like, what am I doing? What do I care about? I care about comics and movies and art, and I'm just sitting in my corner, not pursuing any of it. I'm going to redouble my efforts. I'm gonna self-publish again. I'm gonna stop pitching publishers and just make stuff, and I'm also gonna write movies. Like this isn't selling out. This is me embracing something I love where there actually is money. And I wrote a shitty screenplay over a weekend. I applied for a bunch of jobs. I was living in San Diego at the time. I got an interview at a job writing commercials in Los Angeles, and I was like, fuck it, let's go. And I've never looked back.
Is that something like it's close to that what you do for your day job now?
My day job right now is I'm a writer producer at a media company. So I do like YouTube videos, Snapchat shows, that kind of stuff.
Now, do you still have the dream of like, my dream is always to have a full moon like company that you just like release movies regularly in almost a like club sense? Why do you think that's so hard?
Making indie film is very similar to making comics in that it seems from the outside like there's money, but there's just not. Like, like there's just not. Keeping a core nucleus of collaborators together is very difficult when there's not the glue of financial stability and healthcare. I've seen those kind of troops band together, make a couple things, and then implode. Band together, make a couple things, then implode over and over and over again. And I think my perspective on it is the older I get, the more I'm less interested in making things with a large number of people and more interested in making things with a small group of people or one or two people that I really love and enjoy.
I absolutely agree with you. It's like the smallest kind of group of people that can do something creatively and that you trust them, that you're friends. That's the best way to approach it. I just look longingly at like my copy of Dr. Mordred and being like, I wish I could do this for even less money that it cost them to make this and have just a small and dedicated audience. And I should say, thanks to the Important Cinema Club, like I do have something that pays the bills. So I am doing that, but doing something creative to pay the bills, that's sometimes like, is that an impossible dream out there?
Every artist's true medium is compromise, and that compromise comes in different forms and shapes, and sometimes that compromise is working a day job. Sometimes that compromise is being creative and working in a creative field, but on a thing you don't care about. Having to be the professional and unlock your soul, unspool it, and be like, okay, this is how I can connect to this thing, and then re-spool it up, pack it back into your chest, and put on your organ grinder monkey lederhosen and then go to work, Like,
yeah, it's so tough because I remember when I first moved to Toronto, I was working in television and I was like, I'm not going to do movie stuff if I keep doing assistant camera work on like extreme whatever challenge for kids I'm doing where I get yelled at every day for something that does not matter. And I'm like, I feel terrible for this.
Yeah, I mean, I worked on, when I first moved to LA, I worked on a wrestling TV show, and it was somewhat similar where it was this weird thing where you were like, oh, I'm like dumping my time into this and it's kind of paying the bills, but also not really. And also, like, I like wrestling, but I like wrestling from afar. Like, I feel like wrestling about how I feel about the NBA. I love the NBA. I'm obsessed with it.
You don't want to play in the NBA.
I don't want to play in the NBA.
Yeah.
That sounds awful. I would die. Like, that sounds like the worst fucking thing. I don't know. I don't have many hobbies. The NBA, maybe a little bit of indie wrestling here and there. Like, that's kind of the closest I get to like having something that I'm passionate about that I'm not actively like obsessed with and involved in.
Are you still pursuing movie stuff on your free time as you do comics?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I just worked on a couple episodes of Ben 10. Been talking with some people about adapting Mary Tyler Moorehawk into a movie.
Well, let's talk about Mary Tyler Moorehawk, because if there's a comic that, I mean, everybody listening to this, you should go buy Pumpkinheads. You're probably a creative person. This will speak to you directly. But Mary Tyler Moorehawk, the log line is often like, it's Johnny Quest meets Infinite Jest.
The high concept of the book is a graphic novel, beginning, a middle, and end. It's only this one book, so it's not like there's this long ongoing series. But it's half novel, half graphic novel. So the comics sections are, like you said, like a Johnny Quest, Buckaroo Banzai style action-adventure comic about a family of globe-trotting scientists attempting to stop the world from ending. And then the novel sections are about a guy named Dave Baker, 100 years in the future, who's obsessed with a TV show that got adapted from those comics that nobody seems to remember. And he sets out on a journey to try and figure out, why does nobody remember the show? What happened to its reclusive creator? And why the fuck do we have the exact same name? Like, is this weird, or is this a happenstance? What's going on here?
This near future, televisions don't really exist in the form that we know them of. So the people who had to create the TV show based on the comic, the only way that they could air it is on washing machines.
Physical objects get outlawed about 70 or so years in the future. And then because physical objects get outlawed, our sense of kind of connective tissue of our culture starts to erode. People start to forget what stories are. They forget what TV shows are. Within like only like a generation or a generation and a half, the idea of watching fictional narrative becomes just completely antithetical and like a confusing thing. And so it takes this like weird ice cream cone magnate from Arizona to basically decide she's going to burn her fortune and try and make a TV show station, like a production company.
This one book is literally about what it takes for a group of people to create the idea of narrative genre entertainment and build it up from there. And I love this book so much because it gives you both of those things. The meta narrative, which is half the book, about creating this thing, as well as the greatest adventure pulp serial that you wish existed in some kind of form, and that it could go beyond the comics that you're reading themselves, which you wrote and drew in the book, Mary Tyler Moorehawk.
That means a lot to me to hear you say that. I'm very proud of the book, but I'm also kind of like a little astounded that anyone else likes it. Like, it's exactly what I wanted to make, and the fact that it has resounded in any way, let alone like, I'm not trying to be big-headed, but like it was featured on New York Times and Forbes magazine and like Publishers Weekly. Like, Publishers Weekly referred to me as like, I think the last line of their starred fucking review, Mary Tyler Moorehawk is sure to please fans of Philip K. Dick and David Foster Wallace, which I was like, okay, one, what the fuck? And two, thank you.
It is also, and I mean this in the most positive way, the kind of book that an unsuspecting person will be assigned in a graphic novel course.
100%. And they will hate it.
10 of them are going to go, what the hell is this? And one of them is going to go, this is my favorite book of all time.
That's what's so strange about it, Justin. It's like, to me, I was like, it's not going to work. Like, it's gonna be one guy.
I've heard you say in interviews, like, you would show it to people and they're like, this is bad. Like,
yeah.
This doesn't work.
But I think that just goes to show you, like, nobody knows anything, including yourself. But you just have to you just got to keep going. You just gotta keep pitching.
Considering Pumpkinheads is about like finding a creative voice, building off of the stuff that has come before, even though you find that it's kind of like, is it useless? Is it not? How do you power through something like Mary Tyler Moorehawk, which is such, like, I read Mary Tyler Moorehawk and it feels like an impossible book in that, like, I don't know how someone would write this. Like, the novel portions are meant to look like a magazine and they're beautifully designed. The comic book portions are so visually complex that, like, there's these splash pages where you introduce 50 characters and they all have like little descriptions on them, and some of those characters never come back. How do you power through that and like do all that?
It's an interesting situation because in hindsight, it looks like everything has come together like how I planned it, right? But no, dude, I was like fully Don Quixote tilting at windmills for years. For years. You know, and I've been published by basically every comics publisher in North America other than Marvel. Like, I've done stuff for DC, Simon & Schuster, Dark Horse, you know, Oni, fucking whatever, IDW. Like, I've worked for them all. The one constant throughout that entire process was there isn't anything like this. And that's what everybody would say to me. It's like, there's not anything like this. We can't do it. And actually, at the 11th hour, a company offered to publish it only the comics stuff. They're like, we don't want any of the novel stuff, but just the comics.
No, but that's the whole point of the book, that they interact throughout.
Yes, I agree.
And it's not like Watchmen where I'm like, for the first read through, maybe I'll just read the comic book pages.
I mean, I think the thing that's interesting about it is the multi-angled perspectives on how to read it. I'm not upset when someone's like, oh, I skipped all the prose stuff. I just think it's interesting. And you know what? I've had the opposite happen too, where I've had multiple people come up to me and say, I skipped all the comics stuff. Because after like the first chapter, I was like, okay, I got it. And I just read all the prose stuff. And I was like, that's amazing. Okay. But I think that it's interesting to me, though, that the work feels like it's so multifaceted that people can key into one side of it or the other and not be interested in another. You wouldn't say like, oh, I only read every like fourth page in Mouse. Because it's all one thing, like it is, and like it's great. I'm into it. I love it. I'm not shitting on it. It's just it is a specific singular entity, and the thing I'm most proud of, and was the most difficult to get across the finish line, was the fact that this was not going to be that. Like it just wasn't. Like my goal the whole time was like, I want to make Finnegan's Wake, but for comics. Most people I've dealt with were like, what's Finnegan's Wake? Really? Which is like, okay, yeah, again, I understand it. I get it.
You know, my sales pitch for Mary Tyler Moorehawk is that, like, but it's so approachable if you like this genre stuff. Like, the basis when you start is, like, it's comics about a young girl and her team of, like, robots that fight aliens and monsters and demons. Like, that's easy. Like, oh, I like that stuff. I want to read it. And then if you are a fan of that, probably by extension, you have some affinity for physical media. What does it mean to consume? What does it mean to create? And it's all contained in this one book.
I had finished another graphic novel previously that I had spent 2.5 years on, and it didn't really do anything. It never got picked up by a larger publisher. It wasn't received particularly well. And not that it was received poorly, it was a yawning chasm of indifference. I was like, okay, for my next book, I'm going to make the last comic I ever make. Like I'm gonna swing for the fences, and so if this book doesn't get made, I'm not gonna care, because I'm gonna be so satisfied with the idea that like I made the platonic ideal of what I set out to make. That's a really risky emotional landscape to try and traverse when it looks like it's not gonna get picked up, or you know, nobody cares about it and everyone's confused about it, where you're like, this is the most honest depiction of my soul I've ever made. And like, everyone is like, this is weird, overcomplicated, kind of shitty and annoying. And you're like, yeah, I guess it is.
Did someone actually say that, or just friends that are like, oh, that's cool?
It's not that it's actually said, but you can feel it.
From the tone of voice and the words that are actually being said.
Like when you show it to a publisher and they say, nah, I don't think the prose sections are going to land with our audience.
It's like a family member who once watched my feature film and he went, wow, you spent all that time on that? And it's like, oof, oh, like a dagger through my heart.
But honestly, it's one of the most healing experiences I've ever had, because I think for a long time, I've like flip-flopped back and forth, where for a while I was really frustrated that no one saw me as a writer and they just saw me as an illustrator who like typed things. And then once the writing stuff started taking off, the soul does what the soul does. And I started to be really frustrated that nobody was thinking of me as an artist, even though I would think objectively I can draw. Like, those, and that push and pull was really, I think, difficult at a certain juncture to kind of thread. And when Mary Tyler Moorehawk looked like it wasn't going to happen, I was just kind of despondent, frankly. I was just like, I can't believe that I've been lost in this desert of the unreal for so long. And the ultimate resolution of it is going to be yet another kick in the face. Thankfully, it didn't go that way because of Chris Staros at Top Shelf.
Did you consider self-publishing Mary Tyler Moorehawk?
I mean, ultimately, that's where it would have gone. However, I know what that trajectory is. And also, it's hard to get people to buy comics and read them. It's really hard to get people to buy novels and get them to read them. It's triply hard to get people to buy a comic and a novel in one book and get them to read it without the kind of imprimatur of a structure that is saying this is academically worth it. This is prestigious. This is a, quote, literary effort. That without that mechanism, you look like a crazy person.
I'm on the other side of the chasm where I've tabled with a friend who's an artist and I'm selling Blu-rays and people just walk by and they're like, I wish I had a Blu-ray player, and they're buying his books, and I was like, I wish I could write a comic and people could just pick it up. And then you're going like, nobody reads comics.
Grass is always greener, right?
Always.
And I think that's another lesson of this whole process was like, I think there was a period of time where I was like in a very egotistical kind of art way, being like, recognize my genius, and then being referred to as a genius in multiple legitimate publications, like on Forbes.
You're like, I'm a fraud, I'm an imposter.
I was like, I don't think I'm a genius. Never mind. Yeah. I don't want this. I take it back. I take it back.
Unless a big fat check lands on your desk where they're like, we want to option this for $2 million. And you're like, oh.
Maybe I am a genius. Yeah.
I'll never sell out. It's like, is it Small Soldiers? Yeah, David Cross is like, I'll never sell out. Oh, okay. I'd be willing to do this as a Saturday morning TV show.
I think that's also just something I've really detached from. Like, I think at this point, like I said, when I was younger, before I really understood how the world worked and how this industry worked, I think the idea of selling out was more of a concern to me. And now it's really not. I'm more interested in what do people do with the opportunities that they're given. Because there's versions of selling out where it's a person making their own thing. And there's versions of being on a tour in a corporate system.
Selling out is such an interesting idea, especially I think about it as like, oh, if you're doing something of a licensed property and you're doing it your way and you feel like you're being paid fairly, which, okay, we'll get into that. Is that selling out? I'm like, no. But then if you're doing gambling ads on your podcast, that's selling out and is a morally corrupt thing, in my opinion.
And also, I think it's fascinating to see how the idea of selling out has shifted. Because it's one thing with artists, like you and I are talking about it. And then it's another thing when like laymen or non-creative people and how they perceive that. And how now the idea of selling out is just kind of like, that doesn't exist to them. It's just kind of like, oh, you did an ad for like De Beers Diamonds? Amazing, Lupita Nyong'o. Amazing.
Don't get me started on celebrities doing advertising.
I think the thing about making any type of artistic product, whether that be a product in the traditional sense or even just a painting in your house, it's a record of the process of its own making, whether you want it to be that or not. That process can get really muddy when there is an external force contributing and influencing to it. And I think that's what people respond to when they say they sold out, where it's like, oh, the thing that is they wouldn't probably put it in these words, but like the thing that used to be a holistic record of the process that it took to arrive at this final destination has been informed and compromised by whatever that external leverage of financial incentive was. And I don't know whether that's a good or a bad thing, but I just know that when you see it happening, you can feel it. There are certain people, even in comics, where like their version of selling out is, it's not about taking jobs for publishers that they shouldn't. It's about not having anything to say, but needing to meet a page count to get page rates. And so you see a lot of comics getting made that are like kind of empty or kind of cynical in the way that they're built, where it's just like, I don't really believe that your passion is like Super Mario meets Mad Max. Like, I just don't think it, you know?
I mean, but you live in LA, so you must look around and you see a lot of people living lives that they have to do it that way as well.
To a certain degree, but the thing I'll say about Los Angeles, and one of the reasons why I continue to tough it out here, is the thing I love about LA is everybody's trying to do something. You go to a coffee shop, half the coffee shop is sad, divorced dads typing on laptops. They all think of themselves as the Dances with Wolves guy. Like, I'm just working in this Chinese food shop and I'm just going to send my screenplay to Kevin Costner and I'm going to win an Oscar. It sounds like I'm being sarcastic when I say that, but that's because kind of I sound sarcastic all the time. I genuinely love that. I don't care if you're successful or if you fail. I care if you try. And I love that going around LA, everybody here has a dream. Everybody here is Don Quixote in their own story. Everybody from where I'm from, they're Sancho Panza. They're like, I don't know about that. That's a windmill. And I don't need people to tell me that it's a windmill. I know it's a windmill. I'm choosing to believe that it's a giant. Like, I'm choosing to believe I can slay it.
At the end of the day, not doing it, what will you get out of it? Nothing.
Absolutely. I'm deeply passionate about finding the nooks and crannies in culture that haven't been explored and, like, forcing my way in there. Like, one of my favorite things right now, I love to make fake genres and then make lists of, like, things that would populate that genre. And right now, the thing I'm on, there's a Werner Herzog book called Conquest of the Useless.
Making a Fitzcarraldo.
It's all his diaries. And I loved that book so much. And I was like, I need more of this energy of the, like, the thing that we're talking about right now, this kind of like quixotic drive to go against the odds and not settle for, you know, synthetic solutions. Some of the movies that I've found that I think fit into that genre are like actual documentaries about people literally doing it. And some of them are just like Prometheus. Like, that's a Conquest of the Useless movie. Like, that movie shouldn't be what it is. Probably. Fucking Ridley Scott was like, we're going to make this weird existential tone poem about my brothers dying.
So you're approaching it from the meta narrative of the creation of these movies.
Sometimes it's just literally about a guy trying to do something impossible. Like, there's a documentary about an Australian comedian who's making a horror movie starring Dee Wallace. I think it's called Horror Movie: Making of My Nightmare. And I've never seen the original movie. I've just watched the documentary. It's on Tubi. And it's like a deep dive into this guy's ambition to make a horror movie. And he sucks. It's awful. The movie is just super sad. But it's like crack cocaine to me. Like, I love it. There's another one called Carts of Darkness, which is all about a bunch of like homeless guys who get obsessed with riding grocery carts down a hill. And like, it ruins their bodies and destroys their lives. And like, they all get like drug addicted, and because they're trying to cope with the pain of flying out of these grocery carts while barreling down this hill, but they keep going back and they keep doing it because they're just so into the camaraderie and the quest of taking this golf cart or grocery cart and like just running down this massive hill riding it. There's another one called My Name is Jonah, which is about a guy who took elaborate holiday card photos of himself dressed as the Punisher and Conan the Barbarian in like the 80s and early 90s. And he would mail them to people. And it's just like a character piece about this guy. He spent all of his money buying a motorcycle and a specific machine gun and like building a costume so he could like be the Punisher for this holiday card photo shoot. I just like people that are really interested in things and are compelled to do those things, which is one of the reasons why I like your podcast so much. Like, I listen to every episode. I mean, I know you guys get this all the time in letters where people are like, I love the podcast because you treat high art and low art the same. And like, yes, 100%. But that's what I love about it so much, is that you guys are talking about Edward G. Ulmer or, you know, the fucking Stooges or whatever the topic of the week is. But you're talking about it like it's Mona Lisa. I don't think it should be a revelation, having looked at Mary Tyler Moorehawk, that my brain is very similar to that. And I love things in that same way.
I don't even think that I consciously... I wonder where that separation between high and low art like just kind of dissolved for me. And it was just like, and Will the same way of like, but we just like all of these things. These are all people that are making it. They're coming at it from the same perspective. What I love about comics is that it can be a collaborative effort between like inkers, pencilers, artists, colorists, but it can also be like weird fringe. They only published 2 issues of this in the black and white boom that followed TMNT. And that's the stuff that like obsesses me, that I was like, I want that, because like that is so like pure. And I think purity of intent is a thing when it comes to creative endeavors that I am always the most fascinated with. And I think it's the same thing with you as well.
100%. To the degree that a couple of years ago, I was back issue diving and I found this book called Vortex the Wonder Mule. And it's exactly what you're talking about, where I think there's like three issues of it maybe that were produced, and they were put out by a porn comics publisher who was trying to go legit. I think I got maybe 1 or maybe 2 issues of it from that, and then I bought the other one online, and I read them, and there's such a pure, there's not a cynical bone in the book. It's a superhero comic about a mule who becomes a superhero. It's so clear that the guy making it doesn't really understand why anthropomorphic comics are cool. And so he was like, oh no, I'm going to take it really seriously. It's about a prospector and his mule who get hit by an alien evolution ray and evolved to their furthest possible potential. And the prospector dies because humans, we've evolved as far as we can go. But the mule, he turns into a weird anthropomorphic superhero style muscle bound humanoid mule guy. He is obsessed with the fact that this alien named Warlock has killed his master who took care of him. And so he then sets out on a quest to find this alien with this hyper evolution ray and murder him as revenge for killing his prospector caretaker. And I can't communicate how exactly what you're talking about is in this book, where it's so pure and it's so earnest and it's so like, this guy thought he was making the coolest fucking comic ever. And so I read the 3 issues, and then I reached out to him. I found him on Facebook, and I was like, hey, are you Michael Halbleib who made Vortex the Wonder Mule? He had literally never had anybody talk to him about the book. He was an insurance adjuster.
Wow.
He kind of flipped out. He was like, I can't believe that you found my book. And I talked to him about it. I was like, I really love this. Like, is there more? He's like, no, there's not more. I just made those 3 issues. And then the publisher, kind of bottomed out. And I was like, dude, you got to make more. And so he has now been for the last however many years working on a full length Wonder Mule graphic novel. And I can't wait to see that. And all it takes is just a little bit of enthusiasm from someone to be like, hey man, this thing was fucking cool. I just want more of that in the world. And your podcast is just 2 friends bonding over, hey, isn't this cool? And I just think about the connection that must make for all these people, whether it's parasocial like mine, where I don't know you, but I love the show so much because of that. And it's so inspirational to me because of that.
Well, I should give my background of how I met Dave, which was I was at TCAF one year, and I walked by the table and I was like, Halloween Boy, what is this? And I just started reading, and I was like, okay, this seems pretty good. All right, I'll grab the first 2 issues, got home, read them, and I was like, God damn it. This is the stuff that I love. Well, I got to go back to TCAF the next day and pick up the rest of the issues. And that's what I did. And I picked up all the stuff that you were selling. I went to Beguiling, picked up Action Hospital, the trade paperback that they have, the amazingly called Forest Hills Bootleg Society, which is about making bootleg DVDs of things. That sometimes you just connect with something that is just very pure. I mean, that happens in Pumpkinheads, that a character straight out says, you go to these places where people are creative, sometimes to just connect with people that have the same interest as you, and that you can make friends that way as well.
It's funny because there's a scene in Pumpkinheads that literally is based on the scene or the time that you and I met.
That is literally based on... Wait, what?
Literally. The scene where Morgan is at the Zine Fest and they meet somebody who is selling old fanzines based off of a not the Phantom style.
The Lurker, it's called in the book. Yeah.
But I wrote that even before I was listening to your podcast. I just remembered you because we had a really good conversation about the Boxer's Omen, and I was like, oh, that guy. We're totally into the same things.
Because I just assumed, I read that and I was like, he must have this conversation 100 times per convention of people coming up and talking to him about this kind of stuff.
Sometimes I do, but that one specifically was 100% based off of you and I talking about the Boxer's Omen.
So I can now say there are 2 comics in the world based on interactions I've had with people at TCAF. Because there's another one by Patrick Allaby. He said there's an interaction me and him had. He's like, oh, I put it in the book. And I was like, wait, what? Well, that's 2. Now I'm going for the hat trick next time.
Yeah, the hat trick, baby. The hat trick.
Ooh, wait, I do have one question. When did you decide that all of your books are going to be published in one color?
If there's enough madness, you can form a method out of it. And the answer is, I like single color comics. That's just what I like. That being said, they're also much cheaper to make because you don't have to pay thousands of dollars for a colorist who may or may not finish the job and, ghost you.
So it's just because you're like, I want it to look like color by only using one color and not having to pay a colorist.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a part of it. And then another part of it is that I just genuinely like single tone comics. Like, I think they are cool.
Has anyone ever told you that it looks like a Shonen Jump comic? Because those are published in multiple colors. And other than your books,
yes,
manga's the only place that I've seen it done in that kind of multicolor style.
I have not had somebody say that, but that is totally, I can see that 100%.
We didn't even talk about Halloween Boy, your like takeoff of the Phantom, if it had also every other influence that you loved and kind of dealt with the legacy of what the Phantom represents.
Yeah, basically I was pitching King Features maybe like 3-4 years ago, trying to get the rights to the Phantom. I was working as an editor at a smaller comics publisher at the time, and I went to King Features and was like, hey, we want to do Flash Gordon and the Phantom, and they were like, okay, what do you got? So we started having discussions, had a bunch of rounds of pitches. I wrote a bunch of God documents, and it looked like it was going to happen.
And then it didn't.
Then I had all these documents, and I had a year in between when Mary Tyler Moorehawk was signed up and when it was going to be published. And I was like, well, what am I going to make in the year that I have before the next thing, comes out? I guess, wonder if I just made like a little indie version of the Phantom maybe, or like I could use some of those documents. And then I started trying to turn that stuff into like my own version of what the Phantom is and like distill down what I love about the Phantom and also what I think other people don't love about the Phantom, and how do you make that something that's both accessible and interesting and fueled by pulp tradition while also being contemporary and new and exciting and filled with talking dinosaurs and laser swords and magic. I've drawn 13 issues of it, and I've published 7, and there's a toy and a collection coming out from Oni May 27th.
Mark it down on your calendar. If you like Mary Tyler Moorehawk, which I feel, again, most listeners to this will, you will also love Halloween Boy. They just live in the same universe. And
I mean, almost literally, he's in Mary Tyler Moorehawk. He's in one of the like group cast shots, and then he's on the inside cover like illustrations. He's like on the bottom right-hand corner, just being all fangs and giant ears.
We talked a lot about physical media because that's all Mary Tyler Moorehawk is. What was the last physical media that you bought?
I bought an issue of the sequel comic to The Humans called The Jungle. Do you know what this is?
Yeah, the gorilla comic. I've seen the cover of it. Yeah.
Yes, it is a like basically Planet of the Apes meets Easy Rider. So it's about a bunch of apes that live in a world. It's like an anthropomorphic world where there's chimpanzees and gorillas and orangutans that have biker gangs, and it's like a gritty 70s exploitation movie as a graphic novel where everyone is a chimpanzee. And they recently made a sequel book called The Jungle, which is out from Uncivilized Press. And I bought The Jungle #1.
Nice. What's the last movie you bought? Do you collect physical media in that way, like on Blu-ray?
Honestly, at this point, I tried to do it less because
it's expensive. Yeah.
Space, money. The last movie I bought was a bootleg of Message from Space when I was in Japan.
You're in Japan and you got a bootleg of Message from Space.
They were not saying it was bootleg, but 100% it was a Malaysian bootleg, 100%.
My pal Patrick Macias does commentary, I think, on the Australia of Message from Space. It recently came out on like a weird box set.
I'm obsessed with Message from Space. I had not seen it, and I went to a screening of it at the New Beverly. It was one of the best screenings I've ever been to. Like, it was... Everybody was so into it. They totally got it. And people were yelling and screaming and laughing in a good way. Everybody was there for it. They really got it. It was a double feature of Message from Space and is it called Star Blast?
Star Crash.
Star Crash. It was a double feature of both of them, and they screened a Flash Gordon serial episode beforehand. It was pretty great.
Well, thank you very much for joining me, Dave, and hopefully we can do this again at some point.
I would love to. This was a delight, my friend.